Welcome to Emotional Barriers to Communication. This could also be called the emotional barriers to success or emotional barriers to progress as it relates to leadership. Whether you are a leader in a church in the form of a pastor, maybe a leader of a small group, a leader of the youth group, or maybe it's on your job, in the community, wherever you may be. It could even go as far as being the leader of your home, a parent, whatever it is. There are elements in this session that are designed to help you be a better communicator. All leadership rises and falls with communication. Whatever it is, whatever is being communicated, whatever goals, dreams, plans, procedures, anything like that, if it comes to expectations that need to be abided by, it's going to require communication. And so I would encourage you, as you think about what it is you are conveying. Again, you can be conveying it in the form of a message across the pulpit, in the form of a small group meeting, or even in your home sitting on your couch. Whatever it is, think about the emotional barriers that could be in place that actually hinder the message you are trying to convey. As we go through this, I want to show you 4 different types of barriers, as well as ways that you can help overcome those barriers and how you can help people who have those barriers be able to reduce them so that whatever you're communicating can be embraced. The first one we want to look at is the barrier of confusion. Whenever people feel confused, there's a resistance that comes to something. There's a defensive mechanism that kicks in. They automatically resist your message simply because it's confusing. You may be sharing the greatest message of all time. You may be sharing the greatest idea you've ever had. But if people are confused by it, they're going to be resistant to it. One of the ways that I also describe this is that nobody votes for something they don't understand. There's no way you're going to go to the voting booth and check yes on a measure or an amendment that you don't understand. That's not natural to people. People, again, are resistant to things that they don't understand. And so when we talk about confusion, the emotion that comes with a lack of understanding, we cannot deny the fact that people are very emotional. We're all emotional creatures. Some people are more emotional in a sad way, some in a happy way, some in an angry way, whatever it may be. Everybody has emotions. And when people become confused, when they lack understanding on something, those emotions step into a defensive type posture with people. And so I want to help you be able to break these things down and help people create better understanding. We want to look at 3 questions. When the message that you're trying to convey, what specific ideas, specific goals, plans, or processes need to be clarified? Whenever you're conveying a message, please do not fall into the trap called assumptions. We don't want to assume that people understand the message that you're conveying. Don't assume that they understand all the processes involved. You may be explaining an end goal. You may be explaining a target or something that people want to reach. And in that process, you want to make sure that you're not jumping over the key details that actually create the understanding. You may be telling somebody where you want to end up, but if you're not fully clarifying all the steps that it takes to get there, you're going to leave them confused and they're less likely to achieve the goal that you're trying to set out. The next question is, do people clearly understand the destination? You may be the type of leader that gets into the details, and maybe you're explaining all the steps along the way, but people don't actually have a vision of where this is going to end up at. Making sure that when you're conveying your message, you're not leaving people confused on the end result, on the end goal, whatever that might be. And then finally, number 3, what roles need to be clarified? If you're leading a team, making sure that you're not just conveying what the end result is or the goal that you're looking for, or maybe not just conveying the process and the plan, but taking time to spell out who is responsible for what. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. We make assumptions that, well, this has always been their job, and so they should just know that this is their role. Stop and take time and make sure people understand this person's going to handle this person's going to handle this part, and so that there's no confusion on who is doing what. And then finally, kind of back that up with, do people fully understand and have they accepted that responsibility? Make sure you take time to gain that feedback from them to where they're acknowledging that, yes, they know they're responsible for this. They know the plan of action that needs to take. And as you go into that, making sure that everybody leaves that meeting with full understanding so that there's no confusion. That way people are highly likely to achieve the goals that you've set forth. The second barrier I want to talk about is the emotional barrier of anxiety, that sense of a loss of control. I think I can easily explain this when we're talking about driving a car and we hydroplane. That feeling of the car being out of control. You have your hands on the steering wheel, you have your foot on the brake, but you recognize you are not in control of that car at that moment. That is an extreme emotion that hits us. Defense mechanisms kick in. Fight or flight kicks in. Adrenaline kicks in. All of those things, all of those negative emotions can kick in. That's the last thing we want happening in a team meeting. That's the last thing you want happening as you are conveying a message across the pulpit or you're trying to execute something with a family or a team. You want to make sure that you're managing people's anxiety. Anytime that you're talking about change, there's some type of change initiative in place, okay? You're changing a policy, you're changing a practice, you're changing a goal. Anything that's being changed, that naturally feels out of control because people don't have all the plans and processes in place. There's natural anxiety that comes with change. We have to recognize that. We should respect that and that people feel that way. And so we want to make sure as a leader that we're communicating in a way that helps mitigate or manage the anxiety or that loss of control that people feel. As we look at this, there's 4 questions I want to talk about with anxiety. The first one is too much being expected all at one time. If you are communicating some type of a change that's going to happen and you are insinuating or you're implying that all this needs to happen right now, people will naturally feel anxiety with that. And so make sure that when you're conveying that message that you're also clearly defining the timeline expectations. As we go through this, making sure people understand, oh, we don't have to do all this right now. This is actually going to happen over a process of time. The next question is, what processes need to be broken down into smaller increments? You know, we've heard the proverbial phrase of, how do you eat an elephant? 1 spoonful or 1 fork at a time. Breaking things down that feel monumental, those massive changes, those massive endeavors that feel so big. Making sure that when you're conveying your message, you're communicating in a way that helps people realize that this is done in steps and stages that are easily manageable and easily executable along the way. That right there can help manage people's expectations. The third question with anxiety is what confidences need to be built. Maybe it could be that people's anxiety comes with the fact that you're asking them to do something they've never done before. What do you need to take time and convey confidence in? Maybe you've seen this person successfully lead a different program or successfully do something else. Making sure you're drawing back on that and communicating, hey, you did a great job on this before. You managed the Valentine's banquet extremely well. I know you can handle our July the 4th party. Even though it's bigger and there's more people involved, I know you can do this. Helping take time to build confidence because confidence helps manage anxiety. The fourth element within anxiety is what can be done to regain a sense of control. This is where I want to give people a voice in whatever I'm asking them to do. Maybe I lay out the end goal or the result that we're looking for, but I want to ask them, how do you see this happening? What can you do to help contribute to this? How do you think this should work? As the leader, I don't always want to convey what I want to do and how we want to do it. As a leader, you want to convey the message of the end result. This is the goal that we're looking for. And then give the people the power and the flexibility to bring their voice into it. Because if it's their idea, it's way more likely that it's going to get done. Okay? So as you look at this, people will have a sense of control when they have a voice into how the change is happening, or they have a voice in whatever the progress is that we're looking for. All of these elements help gain a sense of control, which reduces the natural anxiety that people have, especially when it comes to change. The third barrier that I want to look at is frustration. Frustration can be defined simply as unmet expectations. We can find frustration in every aspect of our lives. If it's a marriage that we're talking about and people are feeling frustrated in their marriage, I would encourage you to take time and develop a list of expectations that may not be met and learning to communicate those expectations back and forth. Another thing, if you tell your child to go clean their room, but you've never clearly described what a clean room looks like, it's really the frustration is on you when you walk in that room and it doesn't look like exactly what you were expecting. You didn't clarify what clean really means. You know, for some parents, clean might mean that there's a clear path to the bed so that you don't step on a Lego at 2:00 in the morning. Other people, when you say go clean your bedroom, you want it to be absolutely spick and span where you would not be afraid for a guest to walk in your home and walk into your kid's bedroom. How do you define what you're expecting? I think it's important that we're not setting ourselves up for frustrations. Let's look at some questions that we can ask that helps us in managing expectations, which also then results in the management of frustration. The first thing, have expectations been clearly defined? Have you clearly communicated what it is exactly that you're expecting? Do people know what's expected of them? It's easy for leaders to get frustrated with people who are not fulfilling something on their job. But then you take a step back and you look and you say, well, do those people even know that's being expected of them? It may not. That may not have ever been clearly defined. And that's where we go back to confusion and anxiety. All these three things start now working together in this. The next question is, can expectations even be fulfilled? I go back to the cleaning the bedroom analogy. If I have a 10-year-old and I tell my 10-year-old, go clean your bedroom, because that 10-year-old has done that enough, there should be clearly defined expectations in there. But if I look at a 3-year-old and I tell a 3-year-old, hey, go clean your room, that 3-year-old may not have all the comprehension that it needs to be able to meet your expectation in cleaning the bedroom there. I also look at, do they have the tools to pull this off? If it's something complex, if you're asking somebody in your church to lead a particular outreach effort, do they have the skills that it takes to even accomplish what you're asking of them? Are you setting them up for failure because you're asking things of them that they're not properly trained for, that you haven't taken time to develop along the way? I would encourage you that if you're frustrated with what someone is failing at, step back and think, well, the frustration may not actually be because of them. It may be because you've not clearly identified or taken time to develop the necessary skills and given them the tools that they need to accomplish whatever it is that you're expecting. The third thing then I want to ask is, are expectations realistic? And what I mean by realistic is, do they fit within the scope of reality that you're all operating in? You may have something that maybe somebody is working hard on a task and they're really focused on accomplishing this one thing. And then you come in and you dump something else on them that doesn't fit their reality at that moment and the real pressures that they're feeling. You may be dumping extra pressure on someone that is unhealthy. And they may need you to back off some of that and realize that the expectation you have is not realistic within the scope of everything else they have going. I've had some of my staff members even come into me and say, hey, I would love to be able to accomplish this, but I have these 17 things going right now, and I just want to make sure that you know that I can't possibly get this done because of all that. That's a healthy conversation to have. I love it when my team is honest with me about those things. And so then we can learn to set better expectations and set some proper timelines going forward. The final question with frustration is, are your expectations fair? And something I want you to think about is, fair and equal are not the same. It may not be fair to expect the same thing from everyone. I go back to, if somebody has been on the job for 10 years, they've developed a lot of skills, you can have a higher expectation of them of work to accomplish as opposed to the person that's been there 6 months. Let's look at this from a discipleship standpoint. Expecting people to volunteer at the church or be involved in the church or give to certain programs in the church. If somebody has been a member and you've been discipling them for 15 years, you should have a higher level of expectation for what that person should be able to accomplish as opposed to somebody who got the Holy Ghost 3 weeks ago. It's not fair to expect the exact same out of both of them. We have to give grace a chance to work. And we want to make sure that we're setting fair expectations across the board, because you can actually be setting yourself up for frustration if you expect the same from everyone. So again, let's bring all this down now to the fourth barrier that can be extremely difficult to deal with. And that is the emotional barrier of apathy. It's the opposite, if you will. This is that general sense of a lack of concern. What if people just don't care? You're trying to pull people through something that they just don't care. Motivating people is one of the most difficult parts of leadership. So let's dive into this. I want to make sure that people understand why it matters. There may be some effort that I'm trying to push as a leader. When I was pastoring, there was an outreach effort that I was really wanting to get off the ground. I really believed in this effort. I knew it could potentially change the dynamics of our church, and people just weren't signing up. They didn't seem to care as much as I did. Okay. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves as leaders and understand that if we have the dream and we have the passion, we shouldn't expect people to have the same level of care about it that we do. But it's important that we truly communicate our passion, and we communicate the essentiality of something, or we communicate the global impact of something, so that people can understand that this really does matter, that the change that you're expecting them to execute really does matter. If people don't think it matters, they're not going to do it. Okay. And so then we look at the next question: what demotivational factors are at play? What incentives are lacking? How are people being demotivated to do this? Let's use a real life example. Maybe there's an outreach effort on a Saturday that you're trying to plan for the church, and people just aren't signing up for it. You're getting frustrated. You're trying to figure out, why are these people not signing up? This is a great program. We're going to have so much fun. We're going to meet a lot of people. You're really fired up about it. And maybe even your core team is fired up about it. Maybe you have expressed why it matters, but people are not motivated to do it. I want to look at what is demotivating people. I want to ask them, what's contributing? Why are you not signing up for this? I'm thinking of an example of something where this is real life for me. Is when I was pastoring, people weren't signing up. And then I learned that at the same time I was trying to do that, there was another community event that had been in place in that town for over 30 years. It was in the culture of that community that everybody showed up for this particular event. Here I was trying to plan another event that I knew was going to be great. People weren't signing up for it. I had to learn as a new pastor in that community, this other thing was a whole lot more important to people. Okay. So instead of fighting that culture, I had to change the date of our event. I didn't want to fight that culture. I wanted people to be motivated to get involved in what I was doing, but they weren't. They were more motivated to do something else because that was the culture and it was ingrained into that community. Over time, we actually got involved in that, and then we started showing up and started participating in that event and had a great time. It actually became an outreach effort for us. I had to shelve what I was really wanting to do because I was fighting the culture, what was motivating people deep into our community. The next thing I want to ask about in dealing with apathy is, can engagement be enhanced? When you talk about the word engagement and people becoming engaged into something, a ministry or an effort in your church, you can recognize full engagement when people are willing to give 110%. When people are willing to sign up and they're willing to jump all hands on deck on that. What can be done to help that engagement? One of the things that should be done is having a meeting with those folks to ask, again, how do they want to be involved? This is, again, where you bring their voice into the process, their voice into whatever the change initiative is or whatever the program is that you're trying to roll out. You want to make sure that folks can become engaged in it. Well, if they don't feel like they have a voice in it, they're not going to be engaged in it. And so making sure that you give them ample opportunity to voice their concerns, to ask their questions, to reveal maybe some issue that they have with it, making sure that you're not silencing a very essential voice that you need in that. I think it's very important that we look at if people are apathetic about something and they're just not getting engaged. I want to know why. And I want to go back to not just what's demotivating you, but what's keeping you from becoming engaged. And what can we do to enhance that engagement? And then I'll follow that up with, how have you created buy-in? Have you taken time to get the buy-in of something? Whenever we were communicating our goals to change the name of the church that I pastored, I didn't want to just walk up some Sunday and say, hey, here's the new name of our church. I needed to get buy-in on that. I wanted their voice involved in that. I had a clear word from God on what that name change was supposed to be, but I wasn't just going to force it on people. I wasn't just going to walk in and say, hey, God told me to do this. This is what we're doing, because I needed them to buy into it. And so we took time and we had a meeting one night where everybody got to talk about it and ask their questions about it. And it's amazing that when people get an opportunity to ask questions and alleviate their fears, then they're willing to do it. You can forget apathy. They're going to be engaged now. They're bought into what was happening. And I also gave them a vote, and we had a vote on it, and it was overwhelmingly passed. It was 96%, I think, on passing the name change. And so that was something where I wanted to make sure that we never saw apathy in it. I didn't want to have to deal with that barrier. I didn't want people to be confused. I didn't want them to be frustrated. I didn't want anxiety involved, and I sure didn't want apathy involved. That was something where we took time to communicate with the entire church body so that they could fully embrace that change initiative. And so, in kind of summarizing all of this together, effective communication, again, requires mutual understanding. It requires that sense of control. It requires clear expectations. And then finally, proper motivations must prevail. I want all those things working together. I don't want to walk up somewhere and just throw out a message on something or send some instructions out when I haven't taken time to make sure that all these other things are in place. As a leader, it is your responsibility to make sure that whatever is being communicated is being received and embraced. And so making sure that you acknowledge the emotional barriers that could be there and be diligent and be intentional to overcoming those things, you can make sure that the message you have to deliver can be fully embraced, engaged, and whatever you're looking forward to, it will happen through constant, intentional efforts to communicate in a healthy way.